Okay, so approximately 30 seconds after I shut the video off, I found the circlip, and after you see the size of it, you'll understand how easy it is to lose. So that's all the bigger this thing is. Now this circlip is going to go in, there's a ridge in the piston, and this circlip prevents the wrist pin from falling out. So we're going to push this in until it locks in place. Being careful that it doesn't fly out, and being careful that it's locked in, and that will safely hold everything in place. Next step we're going to do, we're going to install our crankshaft, and we're going to use our ring compressor, and we're going to put the piston back down into the cylinder and connect and torque the rod. So we're going to need a lot of oil. You don't want to put these together without it. And I'm going to grab a few tools here real quickly, an 8mm and a 10mm socket. We're going to remove our rod cap. And again, paying attention to some telltale signs on how this goes together. You'll note that the blue line, if you put the rod cap on incorrectly, they will not line up. Rod cap removed. Okay. When we install our ring compressor around our piston, we want the bands closer to the cylinder. We don't want to do this upside down like this. It won't be as effective. So the band's down close. We're going to oil our piston up. Again, making sure that our ring gaps are 120 degrees, approximately 120 degrees apart. So there's one, and there's the other. We're going to oil this up really, really good, because this is the only lubrication this thing's going to have when it first starts up. Install this in our ring compressor with about half of the skirt sticking out the bottom, and then just crank this ring compressor tight. And what this is going to do is compress our piston rings and get them ready so that they'll slip right down into the cylinder. Now this doesn't always work the first time. It takes a little practice, but essentially that's what you're going to wind up with. And we'll go ahead, put some oil on the rod. Our crankshaft, the tapered end of the shaft, is going to go into the case. We're going to oil everything up first. And then we're going to just carefully install it, making sure that these teeth on the gear line up with the teeth on the governor inside of the engine. Just like that. Next thing we got to do, install our piston. Arrow pointing down. We're going to oil up our cylinder walls too. Now, as I said before, sometimes this piston installation doesn't work on the first try. If it doesn't, you try again. Reset the ring compressor and give it another go. Use the back end of the hammer. Make sure your crankshaft's out of the way, and gently tap your piston down into the bore. Okay, we almost got it. The one compression ring snagged on the way in. And there you go. Piston is in the cylinder. Now we come down below, and we're going to pull the piston rod down until it contacts the crankshaft. just like that. Now we put our rod cap on. And put our bolts in. Not a lot of room to work in here. Sometimes you gotta play around until you find a sweet spot where you can get the room you need to get your bolts in, as you can see here. Okay, once we get these bolts run in and we check that it's rotating okay, then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna torque these connecting rod bolts per the assembly instructions. And I'm going to have to look that up to verify it on our paperwork. Okay, the last page gives all our torque specs. And connecting rod bolt, 7mm by 1.0, gets torqued to 9 foot-pounds or 108 inch-pounds. We're going to use the 108 inch-pounds, which is going to be a smaller torque wrench. Set her up for 108. There's 100, 105, 108. Add a little torque. That's one. And there's the other. Now we want to make sure that our engine still rotates smoothly. Okay, everything's going good so far. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install our lifters and our camshaft. These lifters have to go in before the camshaft. We're going to put a little oil in them, and they're going to go up in these holes right here. Now, if you took this apart correctly, these would be marked for intake and exhaust. This engine happens to have 0 time on it, so it's really not going to matter. So we put our 2 lifters in, making sure that our cam is well lubed and the lobes. Our exhaust is always closer to the timing gear, because there's our compression release. When we install our camshaft, we have to ensure that it's timed correctly. So there's a dot right here where my thumb is, and there's a dot right here on the crankshaft. So we're going to drop this camshaft in there, making sure that those 2 gears are lined up perfectly. those two dots, as long as we've got those, we know our camshaft timing is good. That is really all that's involved as far as assembling the engine internals. The next step we're going to do is we're going to put our crankcase cover back on. We'll put our gasket back on. So we're timed, connecting rod's torqued, nothing else is loose inside. However, we're missing a piece to our governor. There's a little cap that goes on there. It looks like a top hat. This one happens to be missing. Somebody had this apart before and lost that. We'll address that in the next video, but for right now, I'm going to show you how we put this cover back on carefully. And we'll put our bolts in. And these bolts get torqued. I have to double check, but I want to say it's 17 foot-pounds. Always draw them down in a crisscross pattern. Now, 17 foot-pounds on the foot-pound torque wrench is a relatively low setting. So if you look on the last page of the sheet, it will tell you that if you have inch-pound torque wrench, if you're using an inch-pound torque wrench, simply multiply the value by 7 or by 12, and you'll get the proper inch-pound rating. So if you have 17 and you multiply it by 12, it comes out to approximately 204 inch-pounds. So we're going to use this torque wrench because it's going to give a more audible click when we get to our torque setting. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up for 204 inch-pounds. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to torque our crankcase bolt in a crisscross pattern. And go around one last time and just verify that they're all where they need to be. And then take our torque wrench back down to its nominal value. Now, at this point in your engine assembly instructions, one of the things that you're going to do, and there's a video already out there to show you how this happens, it's at this point that you can check your crankshaft end play. That little bit of movement, you can hear it clicking. Remember, if you look at the one video for checking crankshaft end play, this is where you set up your dial indicator and you clamp your engine down to the table. Now is the time that you want to view that video and check your crankshaft end play. And that's it for the basic assembly.